Good evening. Let us begin simply, quietly, together. We are not entering a lecture hall of arguments. We are entering a sanctuary that exists right here, in the very space before a word is spoken. Now then, I know how swiftly conflict comes. Someone speaks, a tone is off, a memory flashes, and the body tightens before the mind even chooses. And out comes a reply that belongs to a lower hour, not to this one. You see, life moves quickly, and we are trained to answer quickly. And so our answers often belong to reflex, to habit, to yesterday's fear. Tonight I am going to give you a practice so small that you may doubt it, and so exact that you can test it before you sleep. Before you answer them, whoever them is for you, return home for 10 seconds. 10 seconds. Not a trick, not a counting game, not a mental formula. A doorway. In other words, the moment before your reply becomes a temple in which you go wordlessly still and let presence come to the foreground. That is all. And that is everything. Watch out. I am speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. We will not be dealing here in blame, in winners and losers, in who is right and who is wrong. Leave all that for the human court. It has its place on its own level. We are going to look at conflict as a revelation of consciousness, and we are going to accept the simple discipline that you and I can rise in consciousness before we speak. Never be ashamed to admit how often we have not done this. I have missed it more times than I care to count. But the door remains open, and 10 seconds is enough to step through. Do not misunderstand me. The promise is not that conflict will vanish from the earth because you paused. The promise is that the place you answer from will not be the place that was triggered. When the place changes, the tone changes. When the tone changes, the outcome shifts. And when the outcome shifts, the aftertaste, how it lives in your body, how it colors the next hour, changes as well. Why? Because consciousness has changed. Because you have restored, even briefly, God contact. 10 seconds is long enough to interrupt the mesmerism, the old momentum of fear or self-justification, and short enough to be usable when the voice across the table is waiting. You can do it in an office, at a kitchen sink, holding a child's question in the doorway. No one need know, but you will know, because there will be a soft click within, and from that click your words will come out of another altitude. Try it. Do not argue with it. Test it. Before you answer them, return home for 10 seconds, and watch what is added when you speak from presence. Now then, let us take the sting out of this entire subject by dropping 2 words from our vocabulary: right and wrong. We must never use the words right and wrong in our spiritual work. There are states and stages of consciousness. You see, when you view a quarrel as a battlefield of righteousness, you immediately take up arms. You must defend your goodness, and by the same motion you must accuse theirs. In other words, the moral frame requires an enemy to keep your halo bright. That is all human, and it is understandable. But it is not the infinite way. Watch out. I'm speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. Conflict is consciousness showing itself at the level where it is functioning. If it is fear consciousness, the speech will be sharp and small. If it is pride consciousness, the speech will be polished and cutting. If it is presence consciousness, the speech may be firm, but it will be spacious and quiet. Now, the moment you insist on being right, you have married yourself to the argument. To be right, you must keep them wrong. To keep them wrong, you must fuel the fire with reminders, with history, with little private footnotes that prove your case. And so the argument survives by feeding on your identity. You become the reaction. You see how costly that is? This reframe is not permission for passivity. Do not misunderstand me. It is not approval of harm. It is the refusal to worship the false god of personal righteousness while you seek the higher standpoint from which right action is added. There are times when the loving word is no, and there are times when a boundary must be drawn as clearly as a line on the ground. But if that line is drawn from vengeance consciousness, it will cut you as much as them. Draw it from presence, and the same word, no, carries no poison. It is law without hate, clarity without heat. Now then, how shall we live this without pretense? Begin with honesty. Never be ashamed to admit where you are. Say within yourself, at this moment I am answering from hurt, or from pride, or from fear. And do not condemn it, locate it. There are states and stages of consciousness. The moment you locate your own, you loosen its hypnotism. In other words, you step off the stage for a breath and look from the balcony. And from that little height, you can rise another step before you speak. You already have the means. Before you answer, return home for those 10 seconds and let the center shift. Do not reach for ammunition. Reach for contact. Let God contact precede word contact. If the level changes, the language changes of itself. And you will discover that the moral heat drains away, the need to win evaporates, and what is needed, whether apology, boundary, instruction, or silence, is quietly added. That is our foundation. Conflict as a revelation of consciousness, and your freedom to rise in level before you speak. Now then, let us come closer to the exact point where the quarrel is born. You say, they triggered me. But watch out. I am speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. The real trigger is never their words or their face or their history. The real trigger is the instant you lose contact with presence. Reaction is not a cause, it is a symptom. The same way fear is a symptom, resentment is a symptom, defensiveness is a symptom. They all point to one thing: separation sense. The sense of being cut off from the center, from the quiet law of God within. In other words, what you call being set off is the moment the inner line goes dead. And without that line, the little self rushes to take the throne. Notice the speed of this mesmerism. The body tightens before you know why. The stomach lifts or drops. The chest locks. The throat prepares its plea. The mind begins to outline a defense, as if a prosecuting attorney had been living in there all along. It brings exhibits A and B and C, and while it is building its case, the tongue is already forming a verdict. All this happens in less time than it takes to inhale. You see, you have already left peace before you have a chance to name it. And if in that instant you feed the mind with more thought, just a little more history, a little more justification, you have added kindling to a fire that would have died for lack of air. Now I want to give you a very simple inner signpost. Reaction always contains urgency. Presence always contains space. Urgency is the red light on the dashboard. It says, stop. The impulse to interrupt, to rush your answer into the gap, to correct, to justify, to win. This is the heat of separation sense. Never mistake that heat for authority. Never, never, never. Presence does not hurry. Presence is not sluggish. It is not passive. It is immediate, but it is spacious. In presence, there is room for another breath, room for another angle, room for the right word to ripen. If you cannot feel space, you can be sure you are not yet answering from home. Let me ask you a question, and let it work in you. What are you defending? Truth or a personal sense of self? Do not be ashamed of the answer. 99 times out of 100, we are defending an image, a history, a reputation we have polished, or a wound we have kept in a velvet case. Truth needs no bodyguard. Truth stands by its own light. Only the personal sense imagines it can be diminished by a sentence at the breakfast table. And the moment you take up arms to protect that little idol, you have confessed, without words, that the line to presence has been dropped. Now then, here is the hope, and it is very practical. If contact can be lost in an instant, contact can be regained in an instant. On one condition: stop feeding the mind. Stop outlining your defense. Stop rehearsing their faults. Stop composing the clever turn of phrase. Let the mind go unhanded for just a few seconds, and the inner line begins to hum again. It does not take effort. It takes non-effort. It takes that small refusal to add one more thought, one more reason, one more proof. Do not condemn yourself when you catch the urgency. Smile at it as a messenger. Let urgency be the bell that calls you home. Even if they are waiting for your answer, even if the room is hot, you can claim an instant of inward space without announcement. And in that little space, a click, God contact. And with it, the fever leaves the speech. This is the diagnosis, and it is the doorway. In a moment, I will show you how to make that instant deliberate, how to rest in a wordless 10-second return. But for now, remember this. The work is not to fix them. The work is to regain contact before you answer. Now then, let us place in your hands the simple instrument itself. The 10-second return is prayer, but I must redefine prayer before we dare to use the word. Prayer is not asking God to fix a person, to correct a circumstance, to favor your side. What is the use of asking God to take your part? God is spirit. God is law as well as love. And prayer is the means of contact with that presence. In other words, prayer is wordless. It is a complete state of receptivity in which you stop talking, outside and inside, and consent to let the atmosphere of spirit become the only climate in the room. You see, the purpose is not to get an outcome. The purpose is to regain contact. When contact is made, outcomes are added of themselves. Here is the inner sequence. First, interrupt the sentence that is forming in the mind. You will feel it rolling toward the tongue. Cut the engine. Second, feel the breath as if you were discovering it for the first time. One conscious inhale, one longer exhale. Third, soften. Soften the eyes in their sockets. Soften the jaw at the hinge. Let the shoulders drop 1/4 of an inch. Fourth, place your attention, gently, not tightly, on the simple fact of presence. If words arise at all, let them be no more than a whisper within. Father, reveal thyself. Then stop. No more words, no more outlining, no rehearsing of comebacks. 10 seconds of naked receptivity. Watch out. I am speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. Never, never, never use the pause to rehearse your argument. That is still reaction, merely delayed. Do not decorate the silence with reasons, scriptures, or borrowed wisdom. Do not imagine what you will say when your turn comes. This is not performance. This is consent. Consent to let spirit be the atmosphere instead of personal will. You are not improving yourself. You are becoming transparent to what is omnipresent already. If it helps, and it will in the heat of ordinary life, give the body a humble cue that anchors you without theater. Press your feet into the floor and feel the support that has always been there. Lengthen the exhale by a count or two and let the belly follow. Let your hands rest where they are. No one in the room need know. Inwardly, recognize omnipresence here in the pause, not later when you are alone, not tomorrow in meditation, but here between their sentence and yours. The place where you stand is holy ground, to the degree of your receptivity. How will you know it is working? The first things that change are small and unmistakable: tone, timing, and the need to win. The voice drops half an inch. The answer waits half a beat more than usual. The compulsion to land the point weakens as if air had entered a sealed jar. And from that lighter place, the words that are needed, fewer, kinder, truer, or firmer, come unforced. Test this before the day is done. In the next disagreement, take your 10 seconds of wordless prayer and watch what is added when contact is restored. Now then, let us clear away the most subtle trap in this practice, because it looks holy while it is not. Watch out. I am speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. The human mind, having heard of presence, will try to make a tool of it. It will slip into the pause and whisper, "Father, make them see," or "Soften their heart," or "Give me the words that win." And it will clothe that whisper in a pious tone and believe it has prayed. That is not prayer. That is lobbying. The moment you use the silence to obtain a thing, an apology, a victory, a change in them, you have turned God into a Santa Claus for your argument. God is spirit. God is a law as well as love. In other words, God is not a personal instrument. The infinite does not enlist as your counsel at the table. The law of spirit is not here to decorate your position or to deliver you a clever sentence to appear wise in the room. Never, never, never. Only when you start to outline an outcome are you back on the human level, and you can be sure the old urgency will be hiding under your robe. You see, true prayer seeks God, not results. It seeks contact, not leverage. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then, only then, all these things shall be added. Added, not extracted. Added, not demanded. Harmony is the byproduct of contact. It is not the object of the pause. If you aim at the outcome, you miss the contact. If you aim at the contact, the outcome is handled lawfully, sometimes by words, sometimes by silence, sometimes by a boundary you did not want to draw, sometimes by your own humility becoming the temperature that cools the room. Let me speak to spiritual pride, gently but firmly. The ego loves to be the conscious one, the centered one, the enlightened one who pauses while the other rants. It enjoys the quiet sigh, the small smile, the superior mercy that says, "I will hold space for your immaturity." That is stagecraft, not spirit. Humility is the sign of a higher stage. In humility, there is no "I who am calm" and "you who are not." There is only a willingness to be transparent to what is already here. In that transparency, you may discover that the first word added to you is an apology from your own lips, or a simple, "Let me listen," and your pride will not burn because presence is speaking, not the personal self. So here is the replacement intention. Not, let me handle this well. Not, give me the line that lands. But, Father, reveal thyself. Or even less, no words at all, only availability. Let me be available to the presence that is already here. That is all. No asking for their change, no asking for a win, no private negotiation with the universe. Consent. And then, keep your hands off the outcome. Test yourself in the next pause. If you find that you are using the silence to load the dice, stop. Start again. Turn within without objective, and let the click of contact happen in its own way, in its own time. When contact is made, the right word, the right tone, the right restraint will be added. Without strategy, without strain, and without the aftertaste of self-congratulation. That is the discipline, and that is the freedom. Now then, let us bring this out of theory and into the kitchen, the office, the family room. Let us sit here and watch it together. 3 ordinary scenes, the same outer conditions, 2 different inner altitudes. Before you answer them, return to presence for 10 seconds. Scene 1. Partner conflict. The familiar jab lands, so familiar you could finish it for them. The body tightens, the mind reaches for the ledger, and the tongue is already assembling a stack of neat, irrefutable paragraphs. That is one path. You know its scenery, raised voices, slammed cabinets, a victory that tastes like loss. Or, fork the road. Before you answer them, return to presence for 10 seconds. Cut the engine of the reply you have said 100 times. 1 breath in, a longer breath out. Jaw softens, eyes unhook, and in that little space, a click. Contact. Urgency loosens its grip. The need to be seen as right drops a few inches. From there, 1 honest sentence instead of 10 defensive ones appears of itself. I can feel my guard up, but I want to understand what hurt you just then. Or, you're right. Yesterday I was short with you. Not capitulation, clarity. Notice the words may still be firm. I'll discuss this, not if we're scoring points. But the tone has no poison, the motive no fear. The room changes. Why? Because consciousness changed first. Scene 2. Workplace disrespect. A colleague's tone in the meeting slices sideways. Polite on the surface, contempt in the grain. The impulse is instant. A clipped rebuttal in the room, or, afterward, the exquisitely composed email that proves your competence and their pettiness. Watch out. Never, never, never send the email you write in heat. Before you answer them, return to presence for 10 seconds. Feet on the floor, breath lowers. Attention turns from theater to contact. The click. From there, you speak once, cleanly, with law without hate. Let's keep our feedback to deliverables. If there's a concern about my part, schedule 10 minutes with me after this. Or, you choose the larger boundary without contempt. I'm going to step out of this thread until we can speak respectfully. Please direct requests through the project channel. Firm, yes. Humiliating, no. The meeting feels the difference. Your own body knows the difference. You did not trade dignity for dominance. You remained in presence and let clarity be added. Scene 3. The family button. Old history enters the room wearing a single sentence, and suddenly you are 12 again, shrinking, flaring, performing the old role you swore you had outgrown. The chest tightens, the sarcasm sharpens, the past floods the present. Or, stop. Before you answer them, return to presence for 10 seconds. The breath returns you to the age of now. Space opens where the script usually runs. The click. From there, you refuse the costume and speak from the adult in presence. I hear you're worried. I'm not going to revisit that story tonight. Or, I appreciate the care behind that comment. My decision stands. You may even choose silence that is not sulking, but sovereignty. Presence does not mean weakness. It means no hatred in the tone and no fear in the motive. And the miracle that is not a miracle occurs. The holiday does not derail. Your heart does not bruise itself against yesterday. In each scene, nothing magical happened to them. Something lawful happened in you. You rose one stage before you spoke, and the same situation received another answer. Before you answer them, return to presence for 10 seconds. Make that your quiet ritual, invisible, reliable, and you will watch entire rooms, relationships, teams, families shift by the altitude of a single breath made holy by contact. Now then, let us take this out of the sanctuary of the pause and back into the moving crowd of human variety. There are states and stages of consciousness. People are not speaking as devils or angels. They are voicing the altitude at which they are breathing. You see, when a person speaks from fear, their tongue borrows the armor of control. When a person speaks from shame, their words may put on the costume of blame. When a person is in presence, their words carry law without hate. If you remember this latter, you need not condemn anyone to keep from being contaminated, because condemnation is itself a descent to the level of the quarrel. Now then, here is a gentle art I want you to practice. Spiritual translation. In other words, listen beneath the syllables for the climate out of which they are spoken. Anger may be fear trying to look large. Control may be insecurity seeking a wall to lean upon. Sarcasm may be grief with its fist closed. But watch out. I am speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. Spiritual translation is not diagnosis. It is not, I know what's wrong with you. Never, never, never use insight as a weapon. Translation is simply the refusal to take the surface costume as final. You let compassion inform your firmness without turning you into a judge or a therapist in disguise. What then is the practical measure? Set boundaries outwardly, while inwardly keeping your consciousness clean. That does not say you accept abuse. It says you do not accept the belief that abuse has power to remove you from God contact. You may say, I will continue this when the tone is respectful, and mean it, and act on it. But inwardly, you refuse the verdict, evil person. You do not assign them a permanent address in your mind. You hold to the truth that they are, at this moment, speaking from a stage, and stages shift. If you hold them fixed, you help freeze them there in your own experience. Now here is the paradox that protects you. Compassion without boundaries is sentimentality. Boundaries without compassion are cruelty. Presence brings both together. In presence, you can say no as law, and the no contains no poison. In presence, you can walk away, not as punishment, but as stewardship of peace. And in presence, you can remain and listen, if that is what is given, without swallowing their storm. You stand in your own weather. To keep this honest, ask within the pause one question that saves you from pride. Right now, am I trying to win, or am I trying to witness truth? If you are trying to win, admit it. There is no shame in seeing your own stage. In that very seeing, a rung appears beneath your foot. If you are trying to witness truth, you will feel space, not urgency. You will feel strength, not heat. From that space, choose the outward form: silence, correction, exit, or embrace, and let it be added to you. Practice this in small encounters. Translate without diagnosing. Set the clean line without dirtying your thought. Refuse the superstition that another's turmoil can sever your line to God. Meet them where they are. Speak from where you are in presence. And watch how the room learns the language of a higher altitude by hearing it in your voice. Now then, let us be very honest together. There will be days when you miss it. The heat takes you, the old sentence rides out of your mouth, and afterward you feel the tightness behind the eyes and you know, I answered from the old stage. Never be ashamed of that. Never, never, never. There are states and stages of consciousness, and the seeing of your present level is not a condemnation. It is data. It is a mercy. Use it. The very fact that you can say, I missed the 10 seconds, means you are already rising. You see, failure here is only the signal that the after practice is needed. What is the after practice? Later, this afternoon, this evening, before sleep, sit quietly, not to replay the quarrel, not to make a better speech, but to restore contact and purify desire. Watch out. I am speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. You are not going back into the scene to win it in imagination. You are going back into the silence to relinquish the need to win at all. Sit. Feel the breath as if it were new. Let the body soften where it still holds the argument, and turn within without object. If words are needed to aim you, let them be only these. Father, reveal thyself. I need nothing. Then let the words fade. Consent to wordless receptivity. Let gratitude arise without an object. Gratitude not for being right or being forgiven, but gratitude for the simple fact of presence. Now, about resentment. Resentment is merely a delayed reaction. It is a replay that keeps the nervous system braced in yesterday's weather. It rehearses the scene, polishes the grievance, and each rehearsal is another little shock to the body, another tightening of the jaw, another acid on the tongue. Resentment promises power, but delivers exhaustion. Do not try to out-argue it. Do not try to drown it in affirmations. Presence is the only solvent, because presence restores the one thing that was lost: contact. In the after practice, when you stop feeding the picture and you rest in silent availability, you will feel the heat drain by itself. Sometimes a single sigh tells you the knot has loosened. Sometimes you need to sit with it for 5 minutes a day until the hook unbends. Do not measure. Consent. And if, in that quiet, something is added, an impulse to apologize, to clarify, to draw a clean boundary tomorrow, do it, but do not rush. Outward corrections added by presence carry no self-punishment. They are simple, human, decent acts spoken from another altitude. You are not fixing your image. You are letting harmony express the law that is already operative. Let me give you a small experiment. For 7 days, keep 2 appointments. In the moment of conflict, 1 10-second pause. After any difficult exchange, 1 5-minute stillness. No analysis, no mental carpentry, only the wordless return. Father, reveal thyself. I need nothing. Keep your hands off the outcome. Watch what accumulates. You will notice first the body, less buzzing, more breath. Then the tone, softer, steadier. Then the motive, the need to be right thins, and the desire to be true grows. Some relationships will lighten. Others may remain noisy for a time, but you will not be living at the level of their noise. If you miss the 10 seconds, you have not missed God. Go back afterward and open the line. Restore contact, and the need to be right dissolves like mist in morning light. This is how we deepen the practice, not by performance, but by returning again and again until the atmosphere of presence becomes your climate, and even your corrections carry peace. Now then, let us gather the whole thread into a single cord you can hold in your hand when the room grows hot. God is omnipresent. That is the truth whether anyone believes it or not. But omnipresence is not availability to human sense. Availability is realized through contact. In other words, the ocean is everywhere, but the cup must be open to receive. The 10 seconds we have spoken of, those few wordless breaths of yielded attention, are not a spiritual trick. They are the open cup. They are the door by which the omnipresent becomes available as peace, as wisdom, as a clean yes or a clean no appearing in your own mouth. When contact is made, the answer is added. Not manufactured, not defended, not polished, added. Watch out. I am speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. This is a discipline as well as a promise. Never, never, never use the pause to bend another will. Never use presence to get your way, to save your face, to add weight to your side of the scale. That is idolatry dressed in quiet tones. Always, always, always use the pause to commune, to listen, to be receptive. Seek God for God. Father, reveal thyself. And then, no more words. Keep your hands off the outcome. The law of spirit is precise. When you refrain from outlining, it outlines you. Take this reassurance to your heart, because it ends the strain. You are not trying to become holy. You are consenting to what is already true. The place whereon you stand is holy ground to the degree of your receptivity. You are not trying to invent a better self or cobble together a saintly speech. You are ceasing to interfere with the word that wishes to be spoken through you. Contact does not inflate you. It makes you transparent. And in that transparency, the tone cleans itself. The timing arranges itself. The gesture simplifies itself. And you feel the weight leave your chest because you have stepped out of authorship and into witness. So here is your commissioning, simple and exact. The next time conflict rises, at the sink, in the meeting, beside the crib at 2 a.m., let the first victory be invisible. 10 seconds of presence. Feet on the floor, breath longer on the out. Jaw softens. Inside, only availability. Then speak from that. If it is silence, let it be silence. If it is a boundary, let it be boundary. If it is apology, let it be clean and brief. Let the form be added. Do not carve it out with hurry. This is the promise and the discipline together. When contact with presence is restored, the right words and the right action are added, without striving, without blame, without reaction. Let this be your rule in small things and large, morning and night, today and again tomorrow. Before you answer them, return to presence for 10 seconds and let the answer be added.